We're filming for Hamilton College Jazz Archive today in New York City, and I am very pleased to have two of America's treasured musicians, Jackie Cain and Roy Kral.
Hey,
Welcome.
thank you, Monk.
Good afternoon, Monk.
Good afternoon. I think it's safe to say you're treasured musicians because I saw the audience reaction last night at Town Hall.
I loved it.
Yeah. You know, it was kind of funny because standing backstage when they said that Joe wasn't going to appear because he was ill,
Yeah.
and everybody went, oh, and I thought, oh, geez.
Yeah.
You know, well, we have to jump into his shoes. But then when we came out, we got such a wonderful
right.
reception.
It was such
lovely.
a warm reception.
Yeah.
And I talked to George Ween, who was backstage. I said, George, it was so wonderful. We walked out, we hadn't done anything, and yet we got this great reception. He says, well, we'll have to do more of this.
Yes.
You know, so that was very nice.
You remind him of that occasionally.
I will do it.
Yeah.
Well, I think quality always wins out, you know, and I'll give you a belated congratulations on your 50th anniversary together as a couple.
Oh, yes.
Both in music and in
Thank
marriage.
you.
Well, we've been married 48 years,
48.
but we've been
Been
working
working
together
50.
for 50. Yeah.
So, was it love at first note for you guys?
No. Oh, yes. Love at first note. But
That's true.
not at first sight.
Yeah,
Okay.
actually.
She was much too young for me.
Well, Roy's 7 years older than I am, so at that point when I was about 17, 18
You
years old.
told me you
when
were
we-
16.
No, no. I met him when I was 17, I believe it was. And, you know, he had another girlfriend, and I was just this little naive girl from Milwaukee, you know. So I don't think I attracted his attention that much. But then he did like working with me, I
Yes.
believe.
Here's what happened. A friend of mine brought her in to the club, Jumptown, this early 47th and Western in Chicago. Dave Garraway was looking for sponsors. Jumptown was his first sponsor. He talked up the club, he talked it up, the place starts to boom. And this friend of mine, tenor player, brought Jackie in to hear our quartet. I was working with George Davis Quartet. It was alto, piano, bass, and drums. And this tenor player said, hey, let her sing, she's really good. And I says, man, don't be bringing your girls in here. They'll ask me to play in key of X something that I don't know
Piano
anyway.
players never like to play for girl singers because half the time they don't know what key they sing and they don't know what tune they want to do and that sort of thing. So, you know, they're kind of negative about it in general.
And so I said, no deal. We went to the bar and libations, and he said, oh, come on, she's good. She'll, you know. Okay, she sang Happiness is Just a Thing Called Joe. And I happen to have loved that song because hearing Francis Wayne sing it with Woody Herman's band, Neil Hefti arrangement. And I said, God, that's
Yeah, it
great.
was
Okay.
gorgeous.
And she sang that. The club owner was there that night, and he came up to us and said, you guys need a singer for Friday and Saturday. Okay.
And that's how we
deal with that.
started working
Okay,
together. But I
yeah.
was just the girl singer. I mean, we didn't
Yeah.
do things together in the beginning. I was just singing, you know, ballads and up tempos and
Right.
do a few tunes every set. And the group was quite a good group. And then eventually, as we went along, suddenly we heard, let's see, Buddy Stewart
And
and
Dave
Dave
Lambert.
Lambert with Gene Krupa. We had heard it around that time. They did some records where they used their voices singing together, you know, with the instruments, with the orchestra, and it was vocalese all the way, no lyrics. And we said, hey, that's great, and we enjoyed it, you know.
Right.
So then suddenly we said, well, why don't we try something like that? Because Roy really was an arranger and a composer. So we said, let's do something similar to that, and in our own way. So he started writing some little arrangements for us, which were generally the tune first with the lyrics, and then it went into a vocalese part. And we had quite a few in our repertoire, and that's actually when Charlie Ventura heard us at a Dave Garraway concert.
Dave would present concerts in Chicago. He would have a nationally famous jazz group and then a local jazz group. And so we came in there ready, man. We're loaded for
Yeah,
bear,
yeah.
you know. Yeah, we can do it. And God, we were so young and unknowing. But we had all these vocalese things, and with our alto player George Davis, you know. So we did these things. Man, poured it on hot and heavy, and the group was really good. It was good.
Swinging, yeah.
And 3 days later, Charlie Ventura and his manager came out to Jumptown and heard us. And then the next day they called and said, Charlie's forming a new band. Would you two like to join? I said, Yeah.
You weren't married at this time?
No,
No.
no,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
No,
But
we
they
weren't.
definitely wanted the two of you.
They wanted the
'cause
two
they
of
could-
us, yeah, because he had been traveling at that time with Buddy Stewart and Kay Winding on trombone and Shelley Mann and Lou Stein on piano and Bob Carter on bass. And so they had Buddy singing ballads and doing some things with, you know, voice horn things with Charlie. And I was just the girl singer at first for a few minutes because he had a job at the Sherman Hotel in the College Inn, and they had airtime, and they wanted a girl singer. But you know, something funny happened. I just recall this, that the announcer was not at the club, he was in the studio. You know, and the band played for dancing, but we also did some show things and special material. So from the studio, the guy one night said, "And now a vocal by the lovely Kay Winding." They thought Kay Winding was the woman, and my name being Jackie Cain, you know, sounded more like the guy. So he
Yeah.
kind of got it mixed up. But it was
Well, you confused the issue. This is before we joined forces with
yeah,
Charlie.
well,
Yeah.
It's okay.
just for that one job. It was just for that one job, and then Roy was writing the arrangements for me, and so then finally he wanted us to work together.
Uh-huh.
So
And I
that's-
wrote, they left the city, and I wrote the whole book in 3 weeks, and it was tenor, of course, with Charlie, trumpet, baritone, and trombone. And wrote the book for this engagement that started at the Blue Note in Chicago, and that was 1948, I
48,
believe.
yeah, I think so.
And one of the tunes we did last night was from 1948 in the original bebop arrangement of I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of writing, first of all, in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean,
I stayed at the piano and just writing stuff out. I just stayed there for 3 weeks. And they came into town, we rehearsed and opened the next day.
And we just had enough to, you know, to do for a show or two. I mean, that was all. And then stretch them out a little bit with the blowing, you know.
at that point, did you have an idea of how the voicing worked best with the voice amidst the horns?
Well, the thing is, our voices are an octave apart, perfect octave. We have the same range top to bottom, which makes it easier. You don't have to jump octaves to sing the same song or anything. Now, with the horn, all we have to do is I have to write the horn in to what we're doing, period.
And a lot of things we did were actually unison, but because of the chords that were used and because of, you know, our voices being an octave apart, it sounded really like we were almost doing harmony some of the times. There are overtones.
When two instruments play perfect octaves, then in between are all these overtones. And so the two voices, when we sing in tune, once in a while.
And also we did go into harmony too, you know.
Oh,
we
yeah.
did. I mean, there were sections where we'd go into harmony, and some places we did use harmony, and we did counterpuntal stuff too. Eventually, as we went on, we kept experimenting with.
You
different
heard us
things.
do Cheerful Little Earful last
Yes.
night. Now that is, the whole thing is all two lines going, contrapuntal, until we get to the ending. And you notice that I didn't use piano until the very end. And what surprised me, and that I enjoyed very much, was that after going through all this with just first drums, and then the bass, and then just the bass and the drums and the two voices, when the piano finally comes in, the audience went, yeah, you know. I said, why do they applaud? I think it's because they say, gee, they're still in the same key.
There's Whoa,
Yeah.
that's an
And
accomplishment.
also, I think, too, the fact that we sing the vocalese for two choruses, and then when you finally come in with a lyric, they think, well, wow, that was something, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
It was
Well,
enjoyable. It was wonderful.
Oh yeah, and it built so nice, you know. And when the piano finally comes in, it makes everything that came before it so much better. It really
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
It was a delightful, joyful experience. It just made my evening, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to ask about the fade out section on "I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles," and I was taking notes while you were playing.
Good. That's called doing your homework.
Yeah. Biap la duya. See,
What
I couldn't
is
quite get it.
Bilyab, bilyabba
Oh, bliabba-da-booba-da-bubbles. 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 See?
So now
It's
when
easy once you get it in.
But she would start, and then I answer, and
Right.
you know, so it kept alternating.
But originally, it wasn't that way. Originally, we had a set ending, and it was sort of in harmony with the horn, and when we did it with Charlie. But then later on, we re-recorded it because I think it was Creed Taylor wanted us to do it again, and we did We did an album with a big band. You know, it was a great time because we did it with, was it?
It was Quincy Jones.
Quincy Jones was the conductor, and he did a couple of the arrangements. But we were using it as a arranger's showcase. We had Ernie Wilkins wrote 2, Roy wrote 2, Quincy wrote 2, and Ralph Burns wrote the ballads, and it was really nice. Bill Holman
did a couple of
did
vocalist
2,
things. Yeah.
and so it was a fun album for us because it got us out of doing the same thing. And you know, you like to change what you're doing, it makes it more interesting, more exciting. And so when we did that, Ernie Wilkins wrote the arrangement, and at the end he changed it. He thought it would be more effective for a record because it's easy to do a fade out
On the board.
on the board, you know.
Right.
But when we started doing it again, we said, well, let's do it that way. You know, it's kind of a fun ending, but it's hard to do a fade out. So you know,
Well, a live fade out is
Live fade out, yeah. Yeah.
but people get it.
Yeah.
And especially if you don't use it for your last tune, it doesn't evoke a lot of applause maybe right away.
What made you choose back then, I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles,
Here-
or any tune like that you wouldn't connect in?
It's a
as
funny one. We were doing these things with Charlie Ventura. His manager said, let's take a song that everybody knows, that everybody's heard all their lives, and do something to it so they know what different treatment we use to do that song. So he said, how about I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles?
And we said, oh, God, no. You know, we thought that's such a corny
Yeah.
tune, even though everybody knows it and it's a fun thing. But
And
I mean,
so he says, no, try it. See what you can come up with. So
Yeah.
I put it in a 4/4, and that was it.
and that was a big record for us.
Pretty bubbles in the air.
For
Do you sit at the
Charlie.
piano when you do that? When you sit, it's okay. Oh,
What? What
I'm,
did you?
I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles. Do you sit at the piano and kind of flesh out an idea, or do you mostly just think about it?
No,
first?
I play it and listen for things. And that's where like when we do this vocalese section, that's where the improvisation comes in, where I'm, you know, and I say, oh yeah, oh, change this a little bit, okay, yeah,
You kind of play it over and over and over and go over it until you know, an idea occurs to you, and
because
then you experiment
to
with
have it sound right, the two of us have to be exact, and it's like if 2 tap dancers were to dance together and they're doing 2 different things, it'd be chop suey.
Mhm.
So we have to be precise and do the same things. In fact, use
for
the
the
same
most part,
syllables.
but not always, because we go into harmony and we do it. But I mean, basically, when you do the things together, it's nice.
Did you ever have an occasion when you started writing? Obviously, at some point, you had to write the scat down.
At first we did.
Yeah, we did.
Because
Like, how do you spell? Let's see now. Shooba dooba bleep.
Yeah.
just like that.
Yeah. No, the funny thing is, we go over it and we try to find the sound that's the closest to what a horn would sound like, where, you know, where the accents come and things like if it was a trumpet going doop doo wah. So you
Okay,
sing
there
doop
you
doo
go.
wah, you know, you have to sing an open sound.
Or we do like when we do that thing, doo-da, doo-da, doo-da.
Yeah, you try to duplicate the closest thing you can
Like a
with
plunger,
a voice.
you know,
Plunger,
plunger
yeah.
thing, yeah.
But in the beginning, we had some pretty funny ones, I must admit. Like we did a tune of Roy's called Euphoria, which was based on the changes of Swonderful. And it was pretty fun. Bop,
Yeah.
bop, blia, ba doo, ba, ne, and you a ba doo, blue, loo, ba doo. I mean, we had some A, A,
We're
and
gonna
now,
do it again too.
now
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
sounds dumb to us, you know.
Oh.
But I remember one time we were working in a club in San Francisco, and some guy who was going to college there came up, and he was sitting there writing notes every night, and I thought, what the heck is he doing? And he was making a survey on how many times we sang certain vowels and how he was trying.
Yeah.
And when he questioned us, we said, well, gee, I don't know, we don't figure it out to that
I
degree.
never count them, I just sing them.
It was
Well,
funny.
here's a
Yeah.
funny one. We left Ventura at the end of 1949. Then Ruth Price, who runs the Jazz Bakery out in Los Angeles and is doing very well with it, is also a singer. She joined Ventura after we left, and she said that he had her write down all these syllables on long butcher paper you know, just sheets of it. And she said she would have it hanging on the walls anywhere she could see it so she could do these charts the same way. And I said, oh, Ruth, that's terrible to have to
yeah,
see that.
yeah.
Why don't you just make up your own? She said, no, he wanted it just like it was on
And
the
she
original.
probably wasn't used to doing that at that point, you know, because she wasn't singing vocalese. And we'd been doing it. Now it's easy. Now when we do an arrangement, we sit down and the right things sort of come. Once in a while we'll quibble over, you know, we each have a different viewpoint, but then it always comes down to which one works best.
Yeah.
But we sort of more or less sing it and fall right into it, you know, now. So it's easier.
And you got you had a couple really good records in those years with Ventura.
Yeah, we had East of Suez, we had Euphoria, I Forever Blowing Bubbles. And then after we left Ventura, we got into having a mini hit with Mountain Greenery. And that was kind of wonderful.
What does a hit in the jazz world translate to in record sales?
Possibly in the top 10 of the jazz choices for the week.
Okay.
I think you can only find it in Downbeat magazine.
And as far as sales go, I don't think we don't know anything about that. We'd have to ask
Right.
Creed Taylor or somebody, you know.
Right.
Yeah. But we've been very fortunate, we feel, because we've had an opportunity to do different albums with little different flavors to them. Like one time we did an album with about a 14-piece band that was called Free and Easy. And that was a great thing. It was all Bill Holman charts. And, you know, that was different from the big band album that we did, which was about 18 pieces, which had, it was an all-star band. I mean, it had Clark Terry, Art Farmer, Phil Woods, or no, I don't know if it was Phil.
Sure.
But, yeah, I think it was Gene Quill,
Quill.
all these great, great players that we were so honored to be able to work with. And just have, you know, even having Quincy Wright and all these people that wrote for it, it was a thrill for us to be able to do that because that's what it's all about, you know.
Yeah.
It's about doing something new. And people sort of, you know, like one thing that they've heard and they get attached to it, they want you to do it all the time.
Right.
You know, like we don't do I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles anymore, really, and
Right.
we don't do Mountain Greenery, except that this year being our 50th anniversary, we decided it was a smart thing
It's
to do
okay,
it, and
yeah.
we were not sick of it anymore. I mean, you know, you
Right.
kind of, when you do it again after you haven't done it for a number of
It's
years,
okay to revisit it.
There's,
Yeah,
well, there's another thing
it's
to it.
fresher.
On Mountain Greenery, we discovered that, well, I, for one, I can't sing that high anymore.
Yeah, it gets harder, you know.
Yeah.
But,
My embouchure is shot.
well, it's harder
Chops
for him,
can't
too,
do it.
because he's playing and singing, you know, and it's harder to do it. I can make it, but some of them are a strain, you know, some of the high notes. But we did put Cheerful Little Earful down a half step or a step. A whole, anyway, it doesn't matter. But we made it a little lower because we couldn't sing it that high anymore.
Well, at least you don't do what or you can't, with some of the rock and roll guys tune their guitars down a half step, you know, so that
Yeah.
they can.
Oh, yeah, well, that's
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
true.
Yeah.
But tell the
No.
piano player, look, could you go tune that thing again and bring it to
Oh,
Did you have some association with Studs Terkel?
a dear, sweet
Yeah.
friend of ours and a friend of jazz.
Actually, I was the first one to work with him with Charlie Ventura when we did that Sherman Hotel College Inn thing, because he was the MC. Dave Garraway was the MC for some of the shows, and he alternated when
yeah.
Dave couldn't make it. And so that's when we first met him. You met him then, too. And then later on, we've done a lot of interviews with him.
Went up to his studios and did interviews and talked, and he would play the current record and so forth. And he would always come into a club to see us. And let's see, 2 years ago, when we did Jazz Nativity at Orchestra Hall in Chicago, Studs took the place of Charles Kuralt and introduced the show. Now, for Christmas, Studs came first to see us. His dear friends, we sat in a room and we just talked about old times and this and that. And he was wearing this old raincoat and a great big red scarf around his
Muffler.
neck, a
Yeah,
muffler,
yeah.
a muffler, and this crunched hat. And I said, well, Studs, you're going to host the show. What are you wearing? He says, this is what I'm wearing. I want to look like a caroler.
And he was wonderful.
And he did. Yeah.
He walked out on that stage, and the whole audience erupted into applause. It was great, and he, you know, he's such a. I really love that guy. He's so vital, and I mean, I don't know how old he is, but
He's
in
over
his,
80, I'm
He's
sure.
in his 80s somewhere, and he's just so full of life, you know, and inspiration. I mean, he's a very dynamite guy.
He's very animated, you know, just
Yeah. And a great writer, and he's
Yeah.
interested in everything. He's interested in people. He's, of course, he loved Alec Wilder. So the minute we see him, we talk about Alec Wilder and all the friends of ours that we have that are mutual friends. It's fun.
Tell me about East of Suez and how that was conceived. Is the arrangement that you did
On the East of Suez
this
album,
one?
yeah.
Yes.
This is a new arrangement of East of Suez because the original was not in our key. It was something that Charlie had down, and that's where he kept it. And we were out of our range. We had to keep jumping octaves and stuff. So, let's see, Jeff from Concord, Jeff, the owner.
Oh,
Isn't that
I
terrible?
can't think of his name right now, yeah.
I can't remember. He heard us do it at a concert, and he said,
Carl Jefferson.
Carl Jefferson.
Yeah, sorry.
He said, you've got to do that song as part of the new CD you're going to do for me, new album you're going to do
And
for
he
me.
loved it. He loved it.
And so we did, but I had to change the key and do the whole thing over, and different instrumentation.
That was actually a Lou Stein tune that he had written for Charlie, and Charlie did it with Buddy Stewart and Kay Windig. And it was recorded that way the first time, but then when we joined the band, he wanted us to do it naturally because it was a good record for him, big record, So that's how we started doing it. But we love it. I think it's a
Yeah.
great piece.
This particular arrangement reminds me of like how I usually hear Green Dolphin Street with the Latin and swing, then
Oh, yeah.
back and
Yeah,
forth.
yeah.
It's nice-
That's another
nice change.
popular jazz, people always ask for that.
Right.
We've never done it, but maybe one of these days we will.
Well, after you left Ventura, then did you decide to lead your own ensembles?
We
When you were
did,
young?
'Cause that's
and
when we got
we
married.
wanted to, we'd got married. That was pretty important. It was very
Yeah.
nice.
So we decided.
And we decided that we wanted to do something different, and we didn't want to go right back with tenor and the horns and everything. So I started a group with amplified cello and guitar. Guitar would play tremolo to make sustained notes, and the
Sometimes.
bass would play arco. So those three, the cello and the bass and the guitar and the voices. Now that's 5 lines, drums and piano. And it worked beautifully, and it was a wonderful sound, but no one was ready for it. So we had it about 1.5 years, and it was just like putting money into it, and
I think part of the reason too is the fact that we started it and we weren't that famous yet. I mean, we had gotten a certain amount of notoriety with Charlie with the records, and we had a certain following, but we weren't that well known. And when we first started with this group, we were working around Chicago and sort of in that area, and we were working strange clubs where people probably never heard of us and saying, "What is this?"
Yes.
And it was so unusual to see a cello playing jazz, and we had a girl who could improvise a little bit, and it was very interesting. The sound was wonderful. And we had fun doing it. We were the first ones to ever use a cello in a jazz group, I believe.
see who else used it after that? Chico Hamilton, right?
Yeah,
In the group?
Chico,
Yeah.
and there have been other people since, but yeah, I think it's a great sound.
I'm curious, did you listen to a lot of Bach and Vivaldi as a child?
Yes, all through my life, Vivaldi is and Bach, one of our favorite music,
Yeah.
because we listen to mostly classical music and jazz, and not all jazz, but and not all classical, but a bit of each. We also are totally enamored of the bossa nova that came in the '60s, and we've been down to Brazil, and they don't do that anymore.
Well, they do it, but rarely. You have to search for it now. It used to be all over. When the first time we went down there was in the '60s, and boy, you could just go to so many different clubs and hear the greatest music. But then when we went back a few years ago, we worked down in Sao Paulo, and we were down there for a couple of weeks, and it was hard to find good bossa nova. Nobody, I'm sure it's there, it's just like, it's like jazz.
The difference is,
We're in Brazil here.
Brazil,
Yeah,
Brazil
exactly.
now sounds like America in the tropics. That's it.
Well, everything is so generic all over the world now. You hear the
Yeah.
same kind of, well, I won't say how I feel about it, but there's some good music that you hear, but not enough. as far
Who
as
did
I
we
can see.
hear on the awards? The Western singer, Gil.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God.
I remembered his name because I was so struck by this wonderful music. Great harmony, great players.
Maybe Gil was his last name. I'm not sure.
His last name was Gill?
Maybe. Yeah.
That's as much as I can
Well,
remember, but
anyway.
it was excellent. It was just,
Yeah.
wow.
There are some good people in country music
Oh,
now.
Vince Gill.
Vince Gill.
Vince Gill,
Vince
yes,
Gill,
yeah.
and then that new young girl, Leanne Rhymes. She's a fabulous singer. Got a great voice, and she's just true blue. You know, right in there. It's the kind of stuff you like to hear.
Well, it's curious you say that things are becoming too generic. I mean, world music is now a category you can go to the record stores and see world music. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I had a question there. I'm not sure what it was.
Mm.
Except that,
I've got the answer if you can remember the question.
okay, I'll try. They're recording, so there's so much recording going on, and everybody's hearing everything from everywhere else.
Yeah.
Maybe it
Yeah.
tends to dilute it some by the time everybody hears it and puts out their own version of it.
Yeah, well, just like all the traditional things from different parts of the world, as far as dress goes or customs, it's all getting lost. I mean, even in India, they don't make the beautiful cloth and fabrics that they used to make. I mean, they invented paisley and all these beautiful things, and now they're wearing, you see guys with baseball hats and jeans. The young people are going into that, which is kind of sad. It's just like losing the culture of the American Indians, How many people make rugs, Indian rugs anymore, It's a loss, it's a dying art, and
Or you-
music,
yeah.
music is the same, But some people try to keep it alive.
However, I believe that this music we're involved with will live forever. And eventually there'll be a huge resurgence of interest in it. Because everyone is eventually going to get tired of loud and too basic. We noticed that already. There's
Well,
a
as
lot
they
of-
say, from your voice to God's ears, they say that because it would be nice if more people. But with all the college programs and things that are happening concerning, learning jazz and studying it and everything, I think that's going to help it a lot. Although, in the old days, you learned on your own by going out and doing it.
Right.
And that's really key also. Once you know something about it and you're good at it, you have to get out there and practice it, in front of an audience and develop your own style and so
Well,
forth.
let's see, there's North Texas State, which is kind of wonderful, Berkeley,
Yeah.
and
William Patterson.
William Patterson, near us,
Right.
excellent. And you guys up there in
Eastman
Syracuse.
School of Music also.
Eastman.
Yeah,
there's lots
Eastman.
But so many people say that, veteran musicians, that you have to get out there and do it and play with lots of different people. And I suppose someday someone may be able to come up with a program where you're in college, but you do a semester and, out
Yeah.
in a club
Oh.
somehow.
Yeah.
Well, you have to be a good player
Yeah.
to get into the club and be allowed to sit in,
Uh-huh.
because there's so many good players now that it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. So there is a great future for this music.
Just like when you go to Japan, you hear players over there that are fantastic. They're just ridiculous. But there's one thing missing sometimes, and that's the certain swing and a certain feeling that they don't get. It sounds very, how can I express it? It's just mechanical in a way. But I mean, their technique just overwhelms you. It's just, my God, they're so wonderful. But there's sometimes very little things missing
Yeah.
In jazz.
in jazz.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Right. So after the kind of short-lived group with the cello, did you consciously sit and say, okay, the public wasn't quite ready for that. What are we going to do now?
What we did was,
Have a baby.
yeah,
In the interim, amidst all these things, we're having kids and
Right.
and having to
Doing
deal,
life things.
having to do with just living in your life and
Yeah, right.
because and that's been probably one of our problems in a sense of being known to the public, because every time we get a little momentum going as far as having people know us more widely, we would we'd have a family
Yeah.
thing happen. So,
And
but
it was
it's
hard.
wonderful. I mean, we're happy, about it.
but what I was going to say, what we did was cut down to just the two of us, just piano and the two voices, and we worked anywhere we could, because things were rather slow. A lot of clubs were closing, and we worked anywhere we could. And now finally we get on the road with a child, and we had a station wagon with a rack on the top, and we had a kind of a buggy in behind the back seat.
One of those that you lift out of the frame, you know?
Yeah.
And you put it behind the second seat in the
Station wagon.
station wagon. And so if you have to change the baby, you get on your knees and you got your old little bassinet right there, you know. And that was the days when you had to sterilize bottles and everything. Every night you check into a motel on a trip, you know, and have to take the sterilizer in and wash the bottles and sterilize them. And luckily she was by that time just drinking milk, you know, rather than formula. And so I just had to fill the bottles, but still it was like, oh, you know.
This is reality.
This is reality, but you know, it was, thinking back on it, it was fun.
Yeah.
It was like having to deal with it, and we were young enough and had the energy and the will to do it, so, you know.
Well, what happened if you know, you have a duo gig and you're on the road in your station wagon? What did you do with your child while you were performing?
Well, we went to Hawaii, and we're working at this hotel on the roof. And we got into there, didn't know who we're going to get, and finally we found a young Japanese girl who was very responsible. And we would get ready for work, and she would come in and read to for our first daughter, and then put her to bed, and this Japanese girl would go into the bathroom with the lights on and do her reading and do her homework and take care of that. We'd finish our show and we'd come in and she'd go home.
We had to find people wherever we were, and it was always very nerve-wracking because, you know, are we going to find somebody for the first night? And in fact, in that incident in Hawaii, we didn't have anyone for the first night, but luckily it was in the same hotel. And so we left, we got her to sleep, and we went upstairs and did our show, but this is what happened. She heard us. She woke up and she heard us because it was all open. There was no air conditioning. You know, it was like an open roof thing.
Oh,
It was just screened in. And in fact, I don't even know if it was screened in. But anyway, she heard us and she went out of the room in her little Dr. Denton's, you know, and she went looking for us and ended up down in the lobby. And the people in the lobby said, "Well, where are your parents, little girl?" You know, she says, "Well, I hear him singing."
Singing.
And so somebody took over, you know. But that was the only reason she could get out is because the door was one of those that you lock with a little button on the inside. And so she could open it from the inside, but you couldn't get in from the outside. So anyway, that was one of the funny incidents. And I don't know, it was a lot of stuff like that happened, you know. But most of the time we were very good. I mean, we were lucky. We found people the first day we got there through somebody in the club who knew somebody or whatever it was. And then eventually when we had our second child, we started carrying a live-in, you know, mother's au pair, you know, like a mother's helper. And that was good because we had somebody steady then who went with us. And well, we couldn't do that till we made a little more money, you know, so we could afford to pay her.
Right.
But we were lucky in that sense too.
When was their next chance to record at this point? I'm sorry, well, this was around mid-50s?
Let's see now.
First one was 52.
50, first child in 52, so we played and performed everywhere.
I think that's when we did the large big band, didn't it?
Yes. No.
Oh, okay.
Then, at one point, Charlie Ventura called us again and said, "Listen, I have a club in New Jersey. I would like to have the original group put it back together. Would you guys care to join us?" Now, we had an apartment in Chicago, and I had been playing solo piano at a little joint just to make a living while our first child was growing. And so we said, hey, this is a good way, because I'd been doing that for about a year and a half, different places around Chicago, playing for acts, doing this, writing, playing for singers, and
Sounded like a perfect opportunity.
Great, yes, we'll do that.
Yeah, and because we could also move there. He had his own club. It was called Charlie's, what was it called? Open House. And it was on the White Horse Pike outside of Philadelphia. And so it was like you know, it was sort of a semi-permanent thing. We worked there every weekend, and he would bring in a comedian from New York City and put on a show, and it was a big sort of white elephant club out on the highway. It was a great place. Had a great stage and a great dance floor, and so it was a fun place. People came out to it, and he did very well there for a while. I think he had it for a few years. So we went back there and worked with him, and we got an apartment there. And we subleased something, didn't we?
Yes.
Or just leased something, I should say. I think we had a 2 or 3 year lease in an apartment there, and so we stayed there for a while with him, and that was good.
And during that time, our friend Alec Wilder entered the scene. We met him through a friend. We were working in New York City, and this friend of ours, who was Rogers Brackett, who was in advertising, said, listen, I'd like Alec Wilder to hear you because you're doing some wonderful things now. And he said, could you come to this apartment? It's on Central Park South. Okay, sure. So we walk in, and here's this sumptuous apartment overlooking Central Park. And here's a little piano over there and pictures on it and everything. And Alec is there, we meet him. And we talked, and finally he said, well, do a couple of things. Okay, Alec sat down in a sofa with his back to us. Now, I see how smart that was. He didn't have to register anything. And we did this one song. We did Lover.
Oh, yeah.
It starts in 3/4, and then it goes down, and just piano, Jackie and I. And we finished it, a great beginning, and yeah. And all we hear from Alec is like, oh no.
Oh, no, oh, no.
No.
Which was his sign of approval.
It's like saying, oh, wow, you know. So then we understood it. Oh, yes. Okay, he was the first guy who said, you're bad.
Yeah, and he had a way of always remarking, like if you'd start something or do something that caught his ear, he'd go, oh, no, no, oh, you know, or something like that. It was weird.
Yeah.
It was kind of strange, but it was wonderful once we understood, you know.
And we were sitting at the piano and starting to relax a little bit, and we did about 6, 7 songs. And I keep looking at this picture in front of me on the piano, and I look, and it's Winston Churchill and his wife and someone standing behind them, his daughter, Sarah. So we were in Sarah Churchill's apartment because Alec Wilder knew her and Rogers Brackett knew her, and we could use the apartment to meet Alec while she was out of town. And I said, wow,
Yeah, it was
seeing
great. It was
Winston
great.
Churchill and Alec at the same day, woo!
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, that was exciting.
Alec, after that, got us an audition at the Blue Angel in New York City, which is run by Max Gordon, who eventually owned the Village Vanguard.
Yep.
And the guy's name was Jacoby.
Herb Jacoby,
We
yeah,
used to call him the East Side General de Gaulle.
because he looked like that.
And he was pompous and...
Well, he just
well,
had that attitude.
Yeah.
He just had that kind of, you know,
Yeah.
attitude.
So we auditioned, we made it, and we were put into the showroom in the back. Now, Bart Howard was playing piano and playing all those wonderful songs of his. And there would people come through, we would stay there for a while. People would come through like Orson Bean doing his comedy act, Andy Griffith doing his comedy act.
Before anyone knew him.
Oh, I
This
didn't
is
know
before
that.
Oh, yeah.
anybody knew him, yeah.
He was a
And,
stand-up?
Yeah,
yes,
he did a
yeah.
stand-up doing Shakespeare and classic stories with a sort of a southern drawl and funny angles to it, you know. It was very good.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, that was
And several other people. And out in the bar, after the show would be over, we would do our thing, and then somebody else would do this or comedy, whatever, a lot of things happening. Out in the bar, this wonderful, exciting piano player, Bobby Short.
honey, I have to correct you. That isn't true.
Uh-oh.
Well, I wish you hadn't said that.
No, I know. Actually, he was out there, but not when we were working there. We went there to
Well, you
see him
spoiled a good
once.
story, but that's okay.
Well, he doesn't like to let the truth get in the way of a good story, you know. But you're busted.
Yeah, wait.
It wasn't Bobby Short? Or I'm sorry.
No, it was Bobby Short.
Yeah, we went to hear him there another time, and he's confusing it.
Oh,
He thinks
okay.
it was when we were there, but we
All
weren't.
right.
But
Well, then you owe her one.
that's
No,
right.
absolutely not.
It's only the truth.
You're in trouble.
It's only but you see, at this time, a lot of the jazz clubs were drying up. Like 52nd Street wasn't happening anymore, and there weren't that many
Yeah.
clubs. A lot of clubs were closing, and so we were thinking, what were we going to do next, you know? And so when the opportunity came along for us to do this audition, we thought, hey, that's great, you know. That's how we started getting into some cabaret, you know, what they call cabaret.
Yes.
At that time, it was just a joint. It was a saloon, you know. But now it's cabaret, and that was an elegant place, and they had very good performers all the time. Just hearing all these great comedians in there, they were very funny, and we enjoyed the other people working there as well as Bart Howard. And so it was a good opportunity for us. We were there about a month. And I don't remember what happened quite after that. Do you?
We cleared out our apartment in Hollis, New Jersey,
Oh, yeah.
outside of Philadelphia.
That's right.
And
Got an apartment in
You-
Hollis.
no, you were pregnant. We cleared that apartment out and left for Milwaukee. And just before we left for Milwaukee, we did the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And we drove with all our junk to Milwaukee, and my sister helped us pack and everything. You went ahead with Nikki. And we got to Milwaukee, and Jackie's dad had an IGA supermarket. And one day, he was short of help. And he said, listen, one of my guys didn't show up. A whole bunch of stock came in. Could you help me out? I said, sure. So here I am, loading coffee cans, you know, bring the coffee cans in, and you stamp them with the price on the top, you know. Then you take the old ones from the back, put them in front, put the new ones in the back, and put them up, and I'm doing all this stuff. And a woman comes by, and she wheels her cart by me, and she stops. And I look, and I'm still doing it. She wheels her cart, backs up, and she said, weren't you on the Tonight Show about 3 days ago? And I said, yes, I was. Putting those cans down.
My parents had a house at that time. Yeah, it was funny. My parents had a house at that time that was a flat, and when our lease was up in Hollis, which was on Long Island, we had moved from Philly to Long Island. And we had,
that's right,
so, you know, when the lease was up, I was talking to my mother one night on the phone, and I was pregnant at the time, and I said, gee, we don't know quite what we want to do now. And she said, well, why don't you come up here? Well, I'd never lived near my mother since I left home when I was 17, and we got along fine. So she says, you can have the apartment upstairs, and you decorate it any way you want, and you can pick out the colors, and we're just redoing it, you know. So I said, hey, that sounds like, it was like, you know, the answer to our prayers, more or less, because we didn't know what
It was
we were going to do.
angelic guidance, which we've
Yeah.
had throughout our lives.
Yeah, fateful, one of those
That's good.
fateful things, you know. So we went up there and then stayed until our second child was born, and then we went on the road with her when she was only about 6 months old.
Yeah.
So that's when I don't know where we went then, I guess out to California or something.
We were up in Hull,
hard to keep
Canada.
track.
I remember that was one of the first jobs, and
Yeah.
after that we just everywhere, Detroit and up to St. Paul, and
Yeah, we did a lot of
Minneapolis,
different spots.
out to California. We were there for a long time, and on California we were doing once again just piano and the two voices, and we were in a place called John Walsh's 888 Club.
881.
881 Club.
Yeah, it was on La Cienega, yeah.
Boulevard. And word got around, and all of a sudden, Mitzi Gaynor is coming in, Cary Grant is coming in, Raymond Land is coming in, and everybody's coming in, and we're doing great business. and it
Julie
was
London.
wonderful. Yeah, Julie London.
And Bobby Troop, you know, a lot of people who liked music started coming in there.
And that was good for a while. And pretty soon we start getting different bookings, and we get ourselves a group, rhythm section, and yeah, we're on the road.
On the road again. But I think the next major thing that happened was then we went to Vegas to visit a friend of ours who lived there.
Yes.
And we were on our way to Chicago to work at the
Mr. Kelly's.
Mr. Kelly's in Chicago. And so we had the kids in the car and everything. We went to Las Vegas to visit this friend, and we saw him. We stayed a few days, and one day we bumped into this guy on the street who used to be Charlie Ventura's manager, Don Palmer. And Don Palmer said, "What are you doing here?" And we said, "We're just, you know, on our way to Chicago. We stopped to see a friend." And he said, "Well," he says, "listen, this is funny." He said, "But, you know, there's a group that was supposed to open at the Thunderbird, and they were in an automobile accident, and they can't open tomorrow night. So could you open?" And we said, "Well, we don't have a group here or anything. No, we're on our way to Chicago." He says, "Well, if you could do this for me," he said, "it might be very good for you guys, because maybe you'll get something through them hearing you, you know, maybe you'll get a contract to come back or something." So he said, "Well," he said, "I'll get you a bass player
I'll
and drummer.
get you your rhythm
He said,
section.
"We'll get a rhythm section. You'll rehearse one time, or you'll get together tomorrow and open tomorrow night." And we said, "Well, okay." And we had to arrange with the kids. I don't remember even what we did.
I don't know,
but
we found an apartment somewhere, just bam,
Yeah,
get
a
in there,
rented
rehearse,
apartment,
open up at the
furnished, you know.
Thunderbird. And we were there for 2 weeks, and it created a stir because we were doing something totally different than the usual front line who learns how to do dance steps. And we were playing what we do. And I think at one time we had Carl Fontana join us on trombone, and we had a great group. And after the 2 weeks, we had to go to Mr. Kelly's to do our contracted job there. And I told the management, I says, we have to leave and go to Mr. Kelly's and do our 2 weeks over there. And he says, you can't leave.
You can't leave.
I said, well, wait a minute. I said, I didn't have a contract with you. We're here. We're doing a job for you. We have a contract with Mr. Kelly's. I said, and I believe in honoring the contract. After 2 weeks, he says, you go do 2 weeks and you're back here. I said, why not? It was wonderful. So we came back and we stayed a year.
Oh.
Now, by this time, we bought a house. We rented one, and then we bought a different house and got the kids in school.
It was
They were
our
starting
first
to be
house.
school age. And the school system was wonderful. It was a great school system.
And it was really nice living there, too, because even though it was Las Vegas, it wasn't like it is now. It was just like a little sleepy town, except for
Oh.
the Strip.
Yeah.
The Strip
was
had all the big
1957, 58.
casinos, you know, and everything, and that was kind of bright and wonderful, and a lot of great people were coming into the showrooms. And so eventually we worked the Thunderbird, and we just started working the gambling circuit because we could have the kids in school, we could be there all the time, and it was, you know, another answer to our needs at the time.
And in the summer, we would take them on the road with us again. Go to Reno, go to Lake Tahoe, then make a swing through San Francisco, go down to L.A., and go back to Las Vegas, and this time go into the Sands for a year, opposite the Red Norvo quintet. And that was wonderful, because here we had a good group, tight group, and Red had a fantastic group. So we were there for a year, and we got to meet everybody who came through the Sands. Now that's Sinatra, Nat King Cole, Jerry Lewis, on and on and on.
Sammy
Also,
Davis.
Sammy Davis. We also attracted
Lena Horne.
all the musicians from the Strip to hear these two groups. So the place was booming. It was wonderful.
It was kind of like
exciting.
going to school, you know. You go into the, because they'd let you go in the showroom in the back of the room and watch everybody that was there,
Yeah.
and that was the most musical. That
Yeah.
was the most musical place, because most of the places didn't have very good music. It was all kind of loud, bashy bands, you know.
Yeah.
So the only other thing that was happening was Louis Primo was down at the what was that, Sahara?
The Sahara,
The Sahara with
Keely Smith.
Keely Smith and, you know, Sam Butera and
Butera.
the Witnesses. And that was the most musical thing there until
Keely
we
was a
came
good singer.
along.
She still is.
She was
She's
good,
great.
yeah. And they had an act that made it for Vegas, you know, with
Right,
all the
yeah.
deadpan and the takes back and forth and theatricality of
Yeah,
that, you know.
right.
And so, but we were just doing music, you know. We were just doing good things, and Red Norva's group was wonderful. And of course, all the guys from the showroom would always come in, you know, like Frank would come in and Nat Cole would come in. They'd sit in the back at a table and listen to the groups because it was something they could enjoy. And
Or Sinatra would have all the tables lined up right in front of the bandstand, and one big long table, just like out to the end. And he would invite all these people in to sit all the way around.
not every night, but sometimes.
Yeah, occasionally. And I remember this one night, the place is packed, and he calls the head waiter over and says, "Who's that guy down at the end? Tell him
Someone
his
was there that he didn't know.
Tell him his membership is up." And the head waiter went down and talked to the guy, and he came back to Frank and he says, "No, he's all right. That's Joe DiMaggio's shirt maker." And Frank said, "Okay."
That was funny, you know, but because he was a friend of his, so he couldn't throw his shirt maker out, you know.
No.
That's a true story. Yeah. So
Did the advent of rock and roll in the late 50s, early 60s affect what you did and how much you were able to do it? You know?
It didn't make too much of a dent because we still had the same clubs that we were working. And we could do repeats up in Buffalo, up in Toronto, Detroit, Baker's Keyboard Lounge up there. And
except
San
in one
Francisco.
respect, and that was recording, because at that time
Oh, yeah.
we had a manager, what was his name? Monty Kay was our manager. And Monty Kay wanted us to incorporate some, you know, current music, like
Right.
Beatles and stuff. Our daughters, you know, loved the Beatles, and they listened to it, and when we first heard them, we didn't care for it much. As they went on, they got better, and suddenly the tunes started coming through. The
After a
songs
year and a
became
half,
better.
there was some great music that the Beatles wrote.
Yeah, and so we started listening a little more, and we said, well, maybe, you know. And then we picked out a bunch of things and did an album called, what was it called? I can't think of the name of it now.
Changes?
Changes.
No, was that it?
Yeah, Changes was, I think, the first one we did. And that was, we did a Phil Oakes tune, we did, what was the other guy? Love is only feeling. Donovan.
Donovan, yeah.
Donovan, and we did some Beatles things, some Lennon-McCartney tunes, and actually it was quite good. It, you know, it was a lot of people still love that album. I mean, I've had people tell me that they enjoyed it, especially younger people. And then the next one we did right after that was a thing called Grass, and that was one that had also an electric piano. Royce played electric piano for a while because we thought it would be fun to try it. And
Well,
see.
one of the reasons I changed was that some of the clubs we were working had these terrible pianos. Like they have a baby grand, it's 5 feet long, and it sounds like it's strung with rubber bands.
Yeah.
And there's no music in it. You hit a note and it goes da instead of ding, you know. So I said, well, the only thing I can do, I'll get an electric piano, I'll carry my own, it'll be dependable, it'll be in tune, I'll have the same instrument to play on. So we did that. We had also a bunch of sound equipment.
Isn't that,
Yeah,
that gets a lot of fun, doesn't it?
It was fun, and we really enjoyed it for a couple of years, but then all of a sudden it got to be a big chore because we did not have somebody to come and set the stuff up.
Right.
The drummer and
Roy
I
did everything.
did all the schlepping, and
Did
we
you
had
have
these.
a Fender Rhodes or a Wurlitzer?
No, I had a Wurlitzer.
Yeah.
That I had reworked where you could plug it directly into an amplifier with a volume foot pedal and the sustain pedal on it. So it was really a wonderful piano.
And that was closest to an acoustic, I think, at the time.
And the drummer and I would just take all this equipment. We had great big column speakers. We put them in cases lined with foam and up on top of this big monster Chrysler station wagon we had and lash it all down and cover it in canvas and next gig, yo.
I mean, you know, that's why he had trouble with his back for a while, you know.
Yeah.
But that got to be very difficult. And so
Yeah.
finally and then we started working better
The
clubs as
hardest
we
part
went
was the
along.
miles of cable to collect after the gig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But then, yeah, you know, that's the hardest part.
Especially when people spill beer on them. And
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, please. But we finally gave that up because we started working better clubs too. You know, as we were going along, nicer clubs started opening that were bringing in music, and so we felt that the pianos got better at the same time, and
Yeah.
they weren't such a problem. And so Roy was happy to
Besides,
get back.
I started to miss the real piano sound.
Yeah,
And,
nothing like it.
Nothing like it after you go
No.
away from it and you say,
No.
you know,
Yeah,
after a
yeah.
while, this little thing.
So the other thing was cute and funny for a hot minute, you know,
Yeah,
but
right.
it was a hot 2 years. But I mean,
Right.
it was fun. So back to the acoustic, and that was great. We enjoyed going back.
And then Bossa Nova came in hot and heavy. And we left Las Vegas in 1961. We were there 4 years, bought a house, the whole thing. Sold the house in 1962 to the people we were renting it to. But we drove from Las Vegas with our little trailer behind the station wagon with mops and brooms and buckets and kitchen stuff and all of our Indian rugs. And just loaded
We
up
left
this
everything
trailer,
else in the house, you
left
know.
everything there, all
All
the
our
furniture and
furniture and
that,
stuff.
and drove to
And
New
the
York.
kids. Don't forget the
Oh,
kids.
yeah, they had two
We
kids
have
with us. Yeah, count them. And we drove to New York and stopped at a friend's place, Don Payne, a bass player who worked with us and recorded with us. And we found a place to stay. We get into New York, but the only place we could find so far was a motel. And so in September, we're putting the kids in school in Riverdale, New York. And we're making sandwiches in the motel for the kids and taking them to school and bringing them back
Yeah.
and looking for an apartment. Finally, we looked and looked and looked and looked and looked, and nothing appealed to us because everything was like, here's another cell in the beehive on the 16th floor, this one, here's this apartment. Here. No, I didn't like any of them. Saw an ad in the paper that said, old house.
Old house, yeah.
Old house,
100
5 acres of grounds, a private drive, a view of the river. And Jackie said, let's go look at it. I said, oh, you know, it's going to be an
Forget
arm and
it,
a
it's-
leg.
yeah.
It's going to be an arm and a leg.
The funny thing was on the way to New York, I had said to Roy, gee, wouldn't it be great if we could find an old house to live in? Because, you know, we'd been living in this cement block kingdom in Vegas, you know.
And I said to Jackie, that's impossible. Angelic guidance
It's just-
took us to this place. And so finally she talked me into looking at it. She said, well, let's just look at it. So here we look at this house. There's a driveway. It's in a wonderful private section called Alderbrook with stone pillars to enter. And I said, oh, this is going to be like $4,000 a month or something.
Right off the Henry Hudson River.
And you
up-
could look
up the
down
hill.
and see the boats going by, and it was right next to the Dodge estate. And we found later that Robert Morgenthau, who is now state's attorney, lived right next door.
And just as important, the house used to belong to Ellie Nodelman, who's a very famous sculptor. And he's in all the collections, you know, Museum of Modern Art and the Rockefeller collection. And
Anyway, we looked at it, and it was a 1880s, 1865 house, old, real Victorian, all the doodads up on the roof and everything. We looked at the place, and there were about 1, 2, 3, maybe 5, 6 rooms.
This was just part of the house. It was a 21-room house,
Oh.
but there was a caretaker living in the main part of the house, and this part was being rented out.
Either it was guest quarters or servants' quarters originally. Well, we looked at it, and there's wonderful things, like a gas fireplace in the living room, a real fireplace in the bedroom. And we said, gee, this is wonderful. How much? $300 a month. And at the time, wait a minute, at the time, I wasn't paying that much of a mortgage on the house. And I said, oh, that's much too much. That's ridiculous. And the bass player who was with us nudged me. He said, if you don't take it, I'm going to take it.
Yeah, we were worried about the heat, you know,
wait,
like, is it going to be
really?
heated? It's such an old house, and
Maybe I'm
is the
wrong.
plumbing going to work, you know, that kind of thing.
So we had to wait 10 days while the legal part of the lawyers had to check us out, check our kids out, go back through our backgrounds to give us the okay. And finally we got the okay, we moved in. We stayed there 11 years. And it was wonderful because up on the 3rd floor, which we finally gained access to, were some of these Nodelman marble busts.
And
held them in
sculptures.
our hands and looked at them.
Yeah.
Wooden, marble, everything.
Yeah. And there were big sculptures on the property, too, that were, you know, part of the yard.
The front gates, there were dogs, huge dogs, this high, one on each side. You walk through them, and that's the entrance to the grounds. There was a 350-year-old copper beech tree on the grounds. And up the hill was the Dodge estate, and that became, in the winter, our sledding hill. And it was a dangerous hill because our drummer, who had been a paratrooper, he and I went sledding. And we go down this hill, you make a turn here, go up around this one, come down here, and go along this path. And he went over the path, and he fell down over 9 feet onto a driveway. And he said, oh, it was just like a parachute jump. But this was
It was like
wonderful
heaven,
living,
though, you know,
it was-
because it was great for the kids. It was a
Yeah.
great neighborhood, you know, for them to be in, and we just really enjoyed it.
And,
11 years. Oh, and all the Brazilians came there, too, because every time at that time when everybody was coming to New York from Brazil, all the musicians, they would come to our friend Don Payne's house.
Because he had been in Brazil with Tony Bennett.
And they'd come to his house, and he'd bring them over to our house, and we had several sessions, you know, with them playing in our dining room. And we met Antonio Carlos Jobim, we met João Gilberto, we met Carlos Lira, Edu Lobo.
Edu Lobo,
João, well, and Astrid was married to João at the time, and they came over with their little child. I mean, we'd met all these people. It was great. You know, it was just wonderful.
Boy, you have had some angelic guidance along.
Well,
Well, it
seriously,
seems that
really.
way, yeah. Thank you.
And we were there for 11 years, and it was a 15-minute ride to Midtown, and a private drive when you got back there. I could leave in the morning, come back, have lunch, go back into the city, do whatever you need.
Yeah.
And we got into doing television commercials because at one time we were about ready to leave on a trip, go on the road again, and this friend of ours, same Rogers Brackett that introduced us to Alec Wilder, called up and said, listen, I'm doing a jingle tomorrow for Halo Shampoo and would like to have you guys sing on it. And I said, gee, Roger, we're leaving tomorrow morning to take this road trip.
And our friend Don Payne wrote it, too. You know, he had written the jingle.
And see, I said to Roger, I said, no, we can't do that. We're leaving tomorrow. And he says, well, I think it might be worth your while to just postpone leaving one day. It won't hurt too much. He said, it'll probably mean quite a sum of money. And I said, oh, really? He said, oh, yeah. So, okay. We went in, we learned the thing, we recorded it. The next day, Jackie and I, we sang the thing, and it was just like a vocalise for Halo
Very
Shampoo.
nice thing. It was a
How
bossa
did it
nova
go?
thing.
Come
It was just like a simple little, but nice. Yeah, and it was nothing tricky, really. It was very...
And we did that, and next day we leave, we go, we're out in San Francisco, and we're starting to get mail. Now here are these big fat envelopes coming in. And what is this? Oh yeah, advertising agency. Hey, there's probably some checks. Open them up and you look, $900. Next check, 700, 500. Boom, 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 boom. And I said, what have we been doing all these years? That's more money than we're making for a month working in these joints.
You know, in jazz, you don't make all that much
No.
money,
So,
you know, and this was like, what? Oh, we couldn't believe it. And for the few minutes that we were in the
yeah,
studio,
it's
you
like
know.
that.
Amazing.
And
Yeah.
we went back
Yeah,
finally,
yeah.
after months of traveling, went back to New York, and I started a production company just specifically to do television commercials. Now, I had to attend a lot of meetings where they're arguing over whether it should be and or but in the copy. And it's going back and forth across the
Or some
table.
pronunciation or some silly little
And or but.
detail.
No, it's got to be and because that typifies it. And they don't blah, and I'm just sitting there looking.
Boring.
Oh, hum, hum. And then they give you what they call a storyboard to work from, pictures, like a cartoon pictures, and you got to work from that, and you have so much time. Okay, you see the film and you time everything out and make it come out to 30 seconds or whatever it's going to be. They used to have minute commercials at the time, then 30 seconds, and then take a 10-second from those. And so I'd have to time everything out and get my stopwatch, and I'd be sitting there working it out. Yeah, just adjust the tempo a little bit. Yeah, a little faster.
He was
Okay.
very good at it, you know.
Boom,
He
it came
was
out
able
right
to do
at
it.
the end, you know.
Uh-huh.
So I submitted a lot of things. We finally did Cheerios. We did
That was the
Plymouth
best
Automobile.
one.
We did Borden's Instant Coffee. We did
a car
Dr.
thing.
Pepper. We did Plymouth Automobile.
Plymouth Automobile with Red Norvo, actually. He was on the thing we
And
did.
a lot of these major accounts that we got into. And we made a fortune doing it. Singing, of course, I got the fee for arranging. I got the creative fee. I got the fee for leader. I got the fee for piano.
Fee, fi, fo, fum.
Fee, fi, fo, fum. And
Take those fees right
and
to
then
the
I got
bank.
very, I listened. I said, wait a minute, there's an announcer's job comes out of this too. So at the end, I would say, after we finish the music, everything is done, I'd say, why don't you have me just read the copy so the announcer knows where it goes in this particular piece of music, so he knows when to come in, when to go out. Oh, good idea, good, that'll help us a lot. And so I'd give it Cheerios, you know, I'd just give a big smile and like read that stuff.
And he knew right where to put it because he's a musician. He could count,
And when
you
to
know.
get out and when to finish and when to come in.
Yeah.
And
he's got a
usually it
good
took about
voice.
3 days, they would call up and say, would you be interested in doing the voiceover? I said, oh, sure, that'll be wonderful. So, bang, bing, bam, wong, bing, bong, bing. I loved it.
Yeah, it was great.
That's neat.
Well, it helped us to buy our house
Yeah.
that we have now, you know.
Right.
Finally, the owner of the house in Riverdale came back. He was in the Foreign Service. The son of Ellie Nodelman, is Jan Nodelman. He came back, and we knew that it's time.
Yeah.
Our tenure is up. We're not going to be here anymore. And we started house hunting. Well, we looked in Nyack, we looked in Westchester, we looked
All
here, we looked
different
there. We were
places.
so spoiled having this huge property and trees and view of the river and private drive. Says, oh, we can't find
Yeah.
anything that we can afford.
Plus the old furniture that we picked up to put, you know, that fit in the house.
Right.
Friends of ours lived in Montclair and says, when you're through house hunting, come by for dinner so you can relax and you don't have to be so depressed not finding anything. So we're looking around Montclair and we say, gee, that looks nice. This is very,
Yeah.
hey, this is nice. We start to get the New York Times and pick it up on Sunday, look at it, go out to Montclair and get there, and finally we get there and the ones we wanted were gone. We get the New York Times on a Saturday and look and circle the things and call up the real estate agent, meet him there on a Sunday morning. Now we're in business. We looked
Yeah.
here, there, this house, that house, that house. We walked into the house we now have in 1973. The real estate agent was in front of me, I was behind her, and Jackie was behind me. We walk in the door of this place, and here's a great center hall. You step up, and there's more hall, and there's colonial center hall construction.
Well, don't go through all that.
And
right?
Jackie's behind me, and she pulls my coat, and she says, this is it, this is it.
I knew right away. I could see the quality of the house and the way it was constructed.
And
he did too.
we gave notice to our place there, and they were happy to have us out, and we moved in to this new place on May 1st,
And you're still there?
1973. Yes.
We're still there. However, the only one unfortunate part of the story is that on May 5th, our daughter was killed in an automobile accident.
Oh, dear.
So we moved in on the 1st. We were just still living out of suitcases because we
Suitcases.
had a job that weekend in New York at a new club that opened. And we came home from the job Saturday night, and on Sunday morning we had a call about 6:30, I guess it was, that, you know, our daughter was in an accident, get down to the hospital in Tom's River, and so we did.
It's an hour-and-a-half drive.
We went down there,
prayers,
you know,
prayers,
never,
prayers all the way down, all the way down.
you know, never knowing what the outcome was or anything. We get there and walk in, and the doctor said, sit down, and, you know, we sat down. He said, we knew something bad was coming, but we didn't think it was going to be that bad.
That's awful.
But she was already dead, and we just, you know, we just fell apart. We just crumbled, and then we had to go back to Montclair to tell our daughter. She was waiting because she
Our
knew.
younger daughter was home.
And so we went back, you know, crying all the way. I'm surprised we even made it back because we were just like blubbering, you know. And we get back and we told her, and that was a big shock. And she went through terrible, you know, traumatic changes over it. And we all did it. And gee, for a couple of months, we couldn't do anything.
We
Our
couldn't
friends were
listen to
feeding
music.
us.
We couldn't play music. It was just too many memories in the
Right.
music. So
We'd start crying immediately,
scrape
you know.
basement walls and dig in the mud in the garden and do this and do that and all sort of pedestrian chores.
Trying to get the house together and, you know, whatever. It was hard, though. You know, we had to force ourselves, but
Right.
we
And
had to
then
do it because we
our-
had the other girl,
Our
and
dear
we thought
friend,
of her,
Creed
you know.
Taylor, who we recorded for many times, said, listen, it's about time you guys start to do something. I said, gee, I don't know, Creed. He says, well, I've got an opening for you at the Half Note.
The Half Note,
Half
yeah.
Note in New York City on 56th Street. Used to be there. And he said, I'm going to get you a group, and you're going to go into the Half Note, and you're going to start performing again. Okay. So it was a date like a month away, and he got us Ron Carter on bass, Jack DeJohnette on drums, and Dave Friedman on vibes. And okay, I'm writing parts and doing vibe parts and coming out with it and put this together. We had sort of a piecemeal rehearsal. First, we'd rehearse with Ron Carter. Then Jack DeJohnette would be able to come in free. Then Dave Friedman would come in. And finally, opening night, and we go in. And these guys were such whizzes.
They were so
that
great.
It was just it
So
was
creative.
uplifting, this wonderful music we were making together. So all of a sudden, the joy of making music, making good music with a group is
Saved our lives,
great
you know, it
experience.
saved us, yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, one thing we did leave out, I just remembered, that the year before this all happened, in 1972, is when we made that album, Time and Love,
Right.
which is the album we did for Creed Taylor.
Yes.
And that was such a wonderful time. We were going out to Fire Island in the summer. We were renting a house with our friend Bradley Cunningham. And so we'd, you know, spend 3 months out there. And we hadn't been doing anything because we were doing the commercials. So at one point we said, gee, we've got to record something. You know, we should get back in the studio and do something. And I don't remember how it came up. Oh, yeah,
Well,
we were going to go in and pitch it to Creed. We were going to go in and
we'd done
try
maybe
to
4
talk them
albums
into
for
it.
him on Verve and so forth, and
Yeah.
we were going to go into the city and just like talk it up. Creed, we want to do another album, and like let's see what we can do, and like, and so we walk in and we start talking, and he says, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do
He
it.
didn't give us any opposition. We just
And
started,
still,
you know.
we still
It's
got like all this in it.
Yes.
But let me tell you about, hey, but I want,
He was for it right away, and then he got Don Sebeski on it,
Yeah.
and of course Don Sebeski contributed such a tremendous amount because he came up with a lot of the ideas and did all the big, you know, charts,
Beautiful.
orchestrating, and of course there were a couple of Royce things in there too, but he orchestrated everything for a 70-piece orchestra,
Yeah.
and it was just, I mean, it was thrilling to do it.
You had the cream of the
best
Yeah.
players
the
in
best.
New York.
And
Right.
You know, I specifically remember hearing the title tune, and just it was so beautiful. And all of a sudden, when the Bach section
Yeah,
came in,
I
I just wow,
know.
that is brilliant.
And
I know.
the
Just-
opening, I
Wasn't
think,
it?
was where Jackie does the French horn part on
the French.
Was that not Daphnis and Chloe?
Oh
is it?
no, that's
Uh,
from Stravinsky, isn't it?
Yeah.
No. Yes.
There
Oh, it
were
is-
several.
it is,
there were
no,
several
Ravel
other symphonic.
And I remember Jackie's nerves to do
The
it.
first day we went into the studio, I had to sing that, and I hadn't been singing because we were doing commercials.
Yeah.
You know, we weren't working in a club then. That was before the half note and everything. And so I was, you know, I was warming up and trying to get my voice in shape because, you know, we always do that before we do anything. But I went in the studio, I was so nervous because, you know, I had to do this a cappella. It was like, you know. Yeah,
Yes.
afternoon
Afternoon
was fun, and so I did it, and it worked out okay, you know. And he was there conducting everything, and a lot of the string things, of course, were recorded separately, and I had to just come in and fit them in, you know, with the earphones, and that's always such an unnatural situation. When you get in the studio and you're thrown into these unnatural things where you're wearing earphones and the band isn't even there, and you're singing like alone in a booth.
Right.
It's very hard to get into
that
it.
magic.
Yeah.
And there are a few places where it was just all conducted, and we couldn't coordinate. How long do you wait before you come in? Before they come in, there'll be spaces, and so he said, "Don, you got to come help us. Come into the studio." He said, "Oh, sure, yeah." And he said, "Well, now it's going to be like this," and he would come in and it'd be wrong. I said,
Even he couldn't
"Don,
really feel it.
we got to do this right." And he says, "Yeah, but I can't find it either." So he
But we
said,
tried it, you
"Try
know,
it."
quite a
And
few
little
times.
things like, "Gee, if you touch yourself 3 times and then come in, then it'll be all right."
Yeah, it was very tricky, but we did enjoy it. And then I got to do Baquianas Brasileiros,
Yeah.
which was something I would never dream of attempting, you know, but Don thought that I could do it, and thank God, you know, he let me try.
And we did those charts, plus several others with the Syracuse Symphony.
Mm-hmm.
What year, though? I can't remember.
Well, it had to be sometime right after that, so it had to be,
Yeah.
what, maybe 74? Was it before Nikki? No, it had to be 72 sometime, maybe. Had it probably
Later, no,
Yeah, you
much
think
later,
it was?
much later, yeah.
I
Was
don't
it
know.
a simple song on that record also?
Yes.
Yeah.
Was that a Bernstein?
Yes.
Yes. Mhm.
And we
That's from his
coupled
Mass.
it, Don Sebesky coupled it with Dave Brubeck's Summer Song.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
that
no,
was-
no, that's-
no,
that's-
no, no.
that's
You're thinking
something else.
another one. You're thinking of Summertime and Summer Song.
Summer Song and
Summertime
Summertime, yeah.
coupled with Dave Brubeck's Summer Song, where we sing all the voices. It sounds like a chorus, and it's all us doing it. That was fun.
Yeah.
You know, so that was such a fun thing to do because it was different. You know,
Now, do you listen to yourselves, your recordings?
not after we once do them.
Very seldom.
Very
we'll hear
seldom.
them, we'll go to someone's house and they'll play something of
They
ours.
think they're doing us a favor when we come
Yeah.
over to a party or something. They're
Right.
playing our records.
In fact, that's what led us back to East of Suez, because we went into this place and they were playing East of Suez. And I said, God, that sounds great. Let's do that one again. So put it in the right key and we did it again.
But actually, when you walk into somebody's house and they think that you'll enjoy,
Yeah.
you know, and
Right.
well, and it's really nice that they have them and that they play them. But all of a sudden, you don't hear any conversation. You're listening to it. Because-
Why did I do that?
yeah, why did I do that? And there's always something that's a little funny that you could have done better, and you kind of relive the day that you did it.
And
you
I'm
know?
trying to think, what
It
did
throws
we
you right
hear
back
the
there.
other day, a few days ago, I said, let's put that in again. That sounds like, Cy Coleman's My City. New
Yeah,
York.
yeah, that sounded darn good.
And
I know.
haven't heard it in 15 years since we recorded it. And we never wanted to do it, but I think we'll go back to that
Like
one.
last May, we met this friend from Berlin. We'd never met him before. Susanna McCorkle introduced us to him. And he's a DJ, has his own radio show over there and plays, he plays a lot of theater music and he plays jazz because he personally likes jazz. And he's on all the time, and so he had been a fan of ours and had many of our records, but had never met us, so we met him. And so now he said, could I come out and do an interview with you? So he came out and we started talking about these different things, like he wanted to do a whole Cy Coleman program. So we hadn't heard it since we did it, really. And so we went out, I said, well, I think I have one, I'll find one for you. So I found him a tape. And then I thought, gee, I better listen to it. What the heck is on that thing? I don't remember all the songs we did. And we listened to it, we said, hey, that sounds pretty good, you know?
Uh-huh.
When you listen to things that are older, you forget,
Yeah.
you know, because you don't do all of them. Sometimes you'll take one or two from this album and one or two from another one and so on
Yeah.
and so forth. You always like your current things the best because they're the freshest, you
Do
know?
you think there's anybody writing tunes today that are going to become standards?
Yeah, well, Johnny Mandel,
Johnny Mandel is writing some gorgeous things.
Dave Frischberg writes
Yeah.
interesting
He writes
things,
good.
you know. Who else? There must be other people. Well, you know, people like Jerry Mulligan who've written classics, but they're not songs with lyrics, so I don't know. But they'll be standard classic jazz pieces, you know, just like his Line for Lions and Boplicity, and those things are
Yeah.
gorgeous. I mean, you know, they'll always sound good.
Yeah.
and Gil Evans things, and who else? I don't know. Miles.
Any of the show tunes, perhaps?
There are some.
A few.
I mean, some of Sondheim's things are very nice. We did a Sondheim album, and we never thought we could do it because we always felt that they didn't lend themselves to jazz that well. And some of them don't as much as others. So we found some that we thought worked fairly well for us, and it turned out pretty good. We
I
liked
want
it.
to read something you said. A standard has chords that are familiar to anyone, yet interesting enough to the performer to encourage a serious approach.
Yeah, that sounds right.
That's like...
Did you
Sure.
say
You
that?
said
Hey,
Wow, that's my guy.
a serious approach.
well, you take the sheet music, and some of it is great. You know, hey, that's a good beginning. And then do a little alteration and do this and that, and make something that satisfies the inner self. Makes it interesting.
Yeah.
And you know, usually when we do a standard, or something that people know, we try to honor it the way the composer wrote it. I mean, pretty much so. You know, we try to sing the melody the way, the right notes that he wanted and the right chords. But then, you know, if it's a song that's really been used a lot and done by a lot of people, then we feel we can take more liberties because they've heard it that way. They've heard it that way 1,000 times. So now we can start out and maybe do it a little differently, you know, change a note here or a chord there.
Yeah.
My greatest compliment in the last couple of years came from Johnny Mandel. He came in to hear us at the Jazz Bakery in Los Angeles. We had a very good rhythm section that came with us from San Francisco. It was popping. Everything was great. And we did one of his songs called The Shining Sea, which is a gorgeous melody. And I explored ways to bring out more impressionistic sounds in it, just all kind of painting. And at the end, he came out and we were talking and kicking stones and talking, you know. And he said, you know, you play like I think. And that's it.
Yeah.
That's my best compliment in my whole life.
Wow.
The other one that I could relate is that Alec Wilder once said that we often break the rules, but you don't mind. And he's a stickler. He doesn't like when you take too many liberties. But he said, well, Roy changes my chords, but usually they're for the better.
Yeah,
Remember,
God love
he
him.
said some
God
very
bless him.
nice things about us, too.
That's neat.
And one time he said a thing about me that I'll never forget. He said, when she sings a song, it stays sung.
Yeah.
He said that on his radio show when I did it with Lunas McGlone, the NPR show, you know. And that thrilled me that he would say that because, you know, he doesn't mess around. He doesn't say nice things if he doesn't mean them, you know.
Well,
I don't know if it'll happen. Thanks, honey.
you certainly have not been afraid to take some chances. Now, I want to get the chronology right. At the time you did Time and Love. And then I remember liking that album and going out and getting another one. I'm not sure if it was one that came before it or one, I think it was
After.
CTI.
Probably after.
After.
And it had big stones on it,
Yeah.
like a desert kind of scene or something.
A Wilder Alias.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that was much different. And
It was so different.
It
That
was
was-
much more.
There was
Adventurous.
rage in it.
Oh.
Well, not all of it, but some of it. That's right after our daughter died.
Yes.
And also the drummer that worked with us, Jimmy Molinari, he'd been with us a while. He got killed. Somebody killed him down in, you know, Manhattan somewhere.
Oh dear.
And we don't know
This is maybe
we
2
don't know
weeks
the
after our daughter died. And
yeah.
Jimmy,
It was a double whammy, you know.
something was, I don't know what he got into, but he was just killed, thrown off a roof.
We really
and-
don't know what happened. You know, nobody
And so
knows.
this album came out, and it was that first tune,
A Wilder
A
Alias.
Wilder Alias, because I said what Jimmy needed was a Wilder alias to get away from whatever he was doing. Now, a lot of people thought this was A. Wilder.
Alec Wilder.
Alec Wilder.
And people
Yeah.
who bought it thought that, you know.
And here is some
Some
of
of
this, this crazy
This
music.
kind of fierce music in there, you
It's
know,
fierce,
some
yes.
of it, well, one of
Yes.
them was the one, that particular song, A Wilder Alias. and it was had a lot of anger in it and stuff, I think. But then there were other things that were softer. Nikki's song was her favorite song, and then we did that, the one about the beach. It originally was called A Full Moon, and then we changed it to Nikki's song. Creed said we should do it. He said, I said, that was Nikki's favorite song, and he said, well, why don't you call it that? So that was on, and that was pleasant. But I think a lot of people were disappointed in it. I mean, just the average person. A lot of musicians liked it. But then there were a lot of people that didn't like it because it wasn't typical Jackie and Roy, you know, smiley, happy-go-lucky, clever, you know.
Yeah, well, that's not where your life was at right there.
That's
was it?
right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right. I mean,
So-
your music reflects your life, you
For
know.
sure.
So
Yeah.
that was. I don't think that CD or album did very well. I did.
But Creed gave us full freedom, as always,
Yeah.
Yeah.
to do it.
You anticipated my next question almost. Have you ever been in a situation with a record company where they put significant pressure on you to do something because it's selling? You know?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we've gotten pressure, although we haven't succumbed to it
Wait a minute.
often. But once we had to.
Once we did a thing, it was Bob Thiel, who was, what record company, I don't remember.
Was it Atlantic or
Whatever.
I forget.
And he said, listen, you guys have got to cross the line. You got to do something that's very commercial. You got to do a couple of Steve Allen songs.
broaden
you
your
got to do this, you got
audience.
to do that, broaden your audience. Okay. We said, fine, all right, great. So among other things, he gave us one song. He says, you got to do this. And it was a song written by Steve Allen called Pa, Take Me to the Circus, built on an old polka melody.
That wasn't Steve Allen, though, honey. It was
No?
just some other tune that he thought would be a
was
hit.
In my
It had kinda
hometown,
clever lyrics.
Czechoslovakian, it's called Barushka Polka. But this was something else. And we said, okay, so we recorded these 4 things. And later we got home and we sat down and thought about what we did and actually jumped up in the air in total horror and panic, thinking, what if it becomes popular?
Because we'd have to
What
do it.
would we do?
We'd have to do it all the time. Oh, what did we do?
Oh, what have we done?
And that taught us a lesson. Don't ever do
Don't
anything that you
do it.
wouldn't be proud to do, you know,
That's an excellent
over and over.
rule to remember.
Yeah, it
Picture,
is.
Picture doing this. in
Yeah,
a
picture
concert
doing it,
hall
and it's a
and
big
having
hit.
cake.
Now you got to
Now
do
you
it
gotta
for the
do it all
rest
the
of your
time.
life.
It's immediate hell.
Yeah.
There's some more guidance that I guess came through for you.
Well,
Did
this.
it get released?
Yes?
Yeah, it was released, but I think it was it on vinyl or was it a?
I can't remember.
Was it a
It's, you know,
45? It was.
throw it out
It
your
was
mind.
quite early. It was
Yeah.
quite early.
Uh-huh.
The song that was Steve Allen's was called Ooh, Banana Split. That was kind of cute. Banana Split.
But I mean, we'd never dream of singing it now because I mean that was when we were young and you know you could get away with such cutesy pie stuff. But now I mean, you know, I wouldn't dream of doing
Yeah.
it now.
Yeah.
But that's the way the world goes sometimes, you know, because he was trying to broaden our audience and we said, well, okay, maybe this time we'll try it, you know. But we've been told stuff a lot of times. Even Joe Glazer, who was our booker at one time,
Oh, I didn't know that.
early on, you
Yeah,
know, he
okay.
said, I don't know, we had a meeting with him. He says, I don't know, you kids, you walk a line. You're not cabaret and you're not jazz. You know, you're kind of walking the line there. Do one or the other. He says, well, but this is who we are. This is what we do. This is what we like. You know, and
These
we
are
were
the
doing,
songs we like. This is the music we love.
Yeah.
and we were doing both because we could work both kinds of clubs. It just, you know, made it better for us.
Does that controversy still come up for you? Are you cabaret or jazz?
Probably.
Occasionally.
Yeah.
Just
Probably.
like April 19th, the Manhattan Association of Cabarets and Clubs will be honoring us with a Lifetime Achievement Award at a special function they're having. So, you know.
Yeah, and of course we got the 50-year anniversary celebration as part of the Jazz Festival last year.
JVC Jazz
JVC
Festival.
Jazz Festival, and so that's another thing. That's the jazz thing, but you know, so be it. I don't care that much about awards. I just want to do what we want to do
Yeah.
and enjoy it, and we make our living doing it, and you know, it's fun. If we weren't getting paid for it, we'd still be doing it probably, you know. But that's a bonus, and we get to travel all over. You know, that's one of the great
Yeah.
things that we enjoy about it too. We've been to Europe, we've been to Australia, we've been to Japan, we've been to Brazil,
Hawaii.
and we we got paid.
Yeah, and you're
You
not
know?
going in a station wagon with calm speakers on the top.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right, that's right. We're enjoying seeing the world.
I think, you know, you guys paid a lot of dues, and it makes the good times that much better.
Sure, sure.
You also learn a few things traveling. Don't drink the water. You know, you go to San Francisco and you change water, and all of a sudden you feel like it's strange, you know. You go down to Los Angeles and drink that water. Oh, this is weird. It upsets your whole system.
Your system, yeah.
So the evils of the road.
Well, that and even food, you know, eating out all the time. If you have to eat in restaurants all the time, it's not as good as what you probably would have if you were eating at home, you know.
Uh-huh.
It's all right to eat out occasionally, but when you have to eat out every day, breakfast and dinner, you know, you have to be careful about your diet if you want to feel good. We try to, but sometimes you do the best you can do, you know, which sometimes is limited.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So that's another thing that's important, though, when you're traveling, because otherwise your health, you know, if you don't feel good, you can't work well and do well.
If you were listening, you know what, you had some time, you just wanted to listen to some stuff that you were influenced by when you were young, in Chicago and, I'm sorry, Milwaukee, was it?
Milwaukee.
What records would you pull out to listen to revisit your
Yeah.
influences?
Teddy Wilson piano, Earl Father Hines big band, Woody Herman's Thundering Herd, Sonny Stitt, Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Miles Davis.
As we go, you know. I mean,
Right.
I started out without even a record player, listening to the radio, you know. I'm talking about Joe Stafford and, you know, there were a few people just hearing songs, you know, good songs, and the singers were pretty good, you know, and I could learn them from the radio.
Yeah.
And then also getting into more jazz things because I started working with bands around Milwaukee, you know, playing stock arrangements most of the time. But I did get to meet a lot of musicians, and they would say, hey, have you ever heard Billie Holiday? Have you ever heard Peggy Lee? Have you ever heard this one, that one? And then I started listening to other people and going to shows at the Riverside Theater in Milwaukee, and I heard Dinah Washington with Lionel Hampton's band. I thought that was great. I loved her, and I saw Anita O'Day with Gene Krupa on the stage, and going to hear anything that was like that, you know. And I was definitely drawn to jazz because when I'd hear a saxophone playing on the radio, I'd go, ooh, you know, turn the sound up. What's that?
Yeah.
You know.
Or
and
I would listen to late night radio. I was supposed to be asleep, but I would take a small radio under my covers, one of those little radios, and I would listen to Earl Father Hines' broadcast from the Grand Terrace Ballroom in Chicago. And he would come on the air, and you hear like the boom, 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 and the brass is, bah, bah, bah. And then over all this, you hear this voice come in and says, Father Hines, Earl, Father Hines, and he goes, flav, flav, flam, do, fling, flang, flang. And I'd listen, oh God, that's so wonderful, that's what I want to do. And I was studying classical piano at the time. And the next morning I'd get up, go to the piano, and I discovered my piano didn't have those notes on it.
It's going to take some time to find them, too, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. I used to go into clubs in Milwaukee at times, and I was really too young to be in these clubs. But the club owner would kind of overlook the fact that I was there, and I would sit in with different people. There was a group called Eddie Getz, and he was an alto player that Roy knew in the Army, actually, and very good player, and a good rhythm section, you know, I mean, as good as I thought they could be at that time. And
was good.
they'd let me sit in, and I guess they thought I wasn't too bad, or they wouldn't have asked me to come in. They'd always want me to come up. I'd sing The Man I Love and I don't know what all, but funny songs, you know. Can't remember even the rest. That was before I sang Happiness Is a Thing Called Joe, after I heard Francis Wayne sing it. But you know, when people say, who are your influences? Everything you hear is your influence, you know? I mean, there were so many singers. How can you nail it down to one or two people? You know, as I went along, I loved Ella. I loved, you know, Billie Holiday, of course. Who else? Peggy Lee, I mentioned those.
And your good buddy Sarah Vaughan.
Oh, and Sarah Vaughan was a very big influence on me in the early, when I was first working with Roy, because she was very hot then. She was just coming into prominence. And Dave Garroway is the one who dubbed her the Divine One. And he would talk about her all the time and play her records, and I thought, yeah, she's great. I sounded like her for a while, because sometimes inadvertently, people you like, it rubs off on you. You know, you're not trying to copy them really, but it's just a period of development, you know, that you,
Yes.
you know, you're learning as
That's
you
a
go.
Sincere form of flattery, too.
Yeah, yeah. And then at one point I finally got smart enough to say, hey, wait a minute, you don't want to sound like somebody else. You want to have your own sound, so maybe somebody suggested that to me, I don't remember, but I did realize that I had to, so I started just singing pure and straight ahead and not too tricky. And the thing that I believe in is that you should serve the song rather than have the song serve you. So too much stylistic stuff doesn't make it for me. I mean, Sarah, I liked Sarah the best in her early days, the early records, because she even got almost too stylistic, but she was so wonderful, you couldn't help but love her. She had,
Vocal instrument.
she had such a marvelous instrument, and you know, and she had such facility with it, and she always did good music and had good groups. So I mean, you know, she's A-OK, and always was. But I liked her early stuff, the way she sang, you know, simpler.
I just remember that
What?
last night, Marion McPartland took us. She was sitting. We were sitting backstage talking. She took us back to Jumptown, where we met and started playing. And she said that she and Jimmy McPartland were playing in Chicago
At the Brass Rail.
at the Brass Rail, and they would rush out after their final set to hear us at Jumptown, night after night after night.
Oh.
And we never knew it.
We never knew it. Yeah, that was funny. You
And
know.
you, just last night,
Just last night,
She related that.
because I
Yeah.
did know that they used to come and hear us when we were playing somewhere downtown too, and that was later.
Well, that
with
was later
Ventura.
with Charlie Ventura.
But I didn't know that they had come to the other place. But
what's coming up in the near
Well,
future for
We
you?
just got back from Florida. We did a concert down there for the Gold Coast Jazz Society, and we didn't know what to expect because we haven't been performing in Florida. We just haven't.
I think we only did one job down there at a club called Bubba's. Yeah.
At any rate, we went down and we rehearsed with Don Payne, the bass player, who we met in Riverdale,
Our friend whose house, you know, we used.
and then a guy who's been with us recording and on tour, Steve Bagby, the drummer. And so it was alumni. We rehearsed them and did the concert, and it turned out to be wonderful. It was just perfect.
It was in a beautiful little theater, you know, just the right size, you know, kind of a
gorgeous
smaller.
Steinway piano.
Yeah.
It
great
played
piano.
itself. All I had to do was sit there and look. And we did that, and then we hung out in Naples, Florida, with some of our friends for about 5 days vacationing. Came home, opened up the suitcases, emptied them, put them away, and all of a sudden we get a call from John Schreiber. He said, I know it's kind of sudden, but could you guys appear on Marion McPartland's 80th birthday on Saturday? And this was Thursday.
Thursday night.
And we said, yeah, sure, yeah, why not? We're here. Okay. He says, oh, thank you, saved our lives, because Joe Williams got sick, and he's not going to be able to make it. So that was it. And then Jackie said, why not, for Marion's 80th birthday, let's sing that song of hers that she wrote with Peggy Lee. And what's it called?
In the Days of Our Love, which is pretty.
And so I went looking through music, and man, I just had to go back 15 years, or 2 years ago we did it. I said,
Well, we did it a couple of years ago once.
to find it, to see what key or what the melody is or what the lyrics are. And so Friday, Jackie's going back and learning this song that she's going to do Saturday, and with Marion.
Yeah,
So
and
it was
I'm not
kind of-
used to working with other pianists very often
right.
because I don't get to do it that much. You know, I've done it a few times, but not often. And so we ran through it once in the theater, you know, when we
Yeah.
came in for the sound check. And her chords sound so totally different.
Yeah.
And it was an
Only
odd
in a few
key.
places.
It-
She
yeah.
played some beautiful
Oh,
things.
she played beautiful things, yeah. But it did sound different to me, and I don't know, it was another key for her too, because she didn't write it in that key. So
Right.
it was just. But she's amazing.
Brilliant. You know,
She's
she
really
just
brilliant that way.
bam,
She can.
just
She
like
can.
that. She got it.
do any key, you know. I mean, she's just great. So we did it last night, and I was like a little nervous on it, and I kind of clenched up there a couple times. But I got through it,
Yeah.
and after I came back to the release, after she played a half a chorus, then I got it better because I had been through it once. Then, oh yeah, now I remember what it is. That was tough though, and being a broadcast, you know, a live
Yeah.
broadcast, made me feel pressured about it. I probably
Yeah.
wouldn't have been nervous, but I was nervous because of that.
And for me, it was a great pleasure working with Grady Tate on drums.
Yeah,
And
Christian McBride.
and I really
On
loved
bass.
Christian's playing, and he's such a big, warm guy. Like, it just gives you hugs and says, "Yeah, it was good playing with you again," you know.
Yeah.
And with Grady, after we finished, oh, I don't know. Well, I'm going to tell you this, and you can cut it if you like. I went over to him. We went down to the dressing room, and I put my arm around him. He says, "Grady, it was just wonderful because playing with you is really a comfort." And he said, "Yeah, like a jock strap."
We know him
Excellent.
pretty well because he does the Jazz Nativity with us every year.
Right.
We've been
Yeah.
doing that thing
Right.
for 8-9 years, and this year he sings the opening song. He's a wonderful
Yes, he
singer,
is.
as you know.
Yeah.
And then of course we see him every year at that.
Great.
And so we're always in the same dressing room. Everybody's in the one big dressing room, and there's a lot of jokes. And that's one of the things we enjoy about doing that, is because we get to hang out with the musicians every year,
Right.
you know. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for making it into the city today, because I've been looking forward to talking to you, and want to
But-
thank you for your marvelous career
Oh,
and-
thank you.
and all
Well,
the records you've recorded.
great, great.
It's been a grand life, and as I said before, I know we've had some angelic guidance. Just certain things have come up that you can't believe. You know, how come? Just how
Yeah, we've
come?
been very fortunate.
Yeah.
So we try to honor the music and do the best we can when we're working, and we just love doing it. So we feel that we're just so fortunate and so lucky. You know, we're going to do it as long as we can.
Right.
Very often people say, "Do you guys ever think about retiring?" We say, "Why would we? I mean, you know, unless
I'd
we
be doing
can't."
exactly the same
Unless
thing.
we
Yeah.
can't do it anymore, if we don't sound good enough, if we don't think we sound good enough to go out and do it, we'll stop doing it. But if we can make it and keep making it good enough, we will.
Father John, a priest from Boston, said to us, he said, "You two are running your own ministry."
Yeah, that was nice.
It was
Yeah.
nice.
I'll buy that dream.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the rest of your evening, and
Thank
Thanks
you. We're
again for
going over to
coming,
hear
too.
another favorite, Blossom Dearie.
All right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's great, and we're going to hear her tonight.
okay.
Yeah, thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for inviting us.
Thank you, Monk.
You came well, people spoke of you before we came here, and they said, "Oh, you love him, you like
Oh, yeah.
him." Yeah, yeah.
that's nice
So,
to hear.
and you are very comfortable to talk to, so
Good. Appreciate that.
enjoyed it.
That's because I'm talking to people who do what I love and who do it well. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
All right.
And thank you, Tim. All right. And God bless us all.
Nothing can be said.
It was the best of times, it was the worst of times.
All right.
Well, this is the best.